history of mankind. Oh yeah, thanks for recording. The greatest physical activity intervention and the most effective physical activity intervention in the history of mankind is Title IX. So Title IX in 1972 was signed into law, and it prohibits sex-based discrimination in any school or educational program that receives federal money. This often comes out most visibly in sports participation. And I think that this recent Olympics results with US women dominating is directly tied to Title IX in 1972. And the great Billie Jean King said this quote following the Olympics, exactly what I'm trying to say. If you give girls and women the same investment, the same opportunity, the same access, their potential, like the potential in every individual, is absolutely unlimited. And to me, that is just kind of really a motivating thought as we do this work, that sometimes it seems really, really hard to try to make changes in our society to get people to be more physically active, but it has been done. And this is a great example of how it can be done. So that's my motivation for today. So with that, the purpose of today's sports sector meeting is to do a quick review of the strategies that we've been talking about for the past couple meetings. We successfully prioritized them in our last meeting and in the meeting before. And so now we're getting into tactics. And tactics are more concrete action-oriented steps to that could be used to actually achieve a strategy. And so that's what we're going to be spending most of our time on today. We're going to only focus on the top 3 strategies for today. So we're going to focus on the tactics for the top 3 strategies that we've developed over the past couple months, because they were far and away the ones that rose to the top. We'll do the rest of the strategies and tactics, or the tactics for the other strategies, in our next meeting, but we wanted to break them up a little bit so we could really focus on these top 3 strategies. And we're also going to try to weave in some of the great discussion and input that happened at the Kansas City National Youth Sports Strategy workshop that was held 2 weeks ago. I know there was a lot of overlap between the people who attended that meeting and that are attending this meeting. And so we're going to try to merge the 2 in as much as possible. And so Bryce will kind of lead us through that today, and hopefully we'll have a great discussion. But before we go on, I want to ask Bill Brandmeier and Adrienne Roberson, who are the 2 co-leads for this sector, if you guys have anything else you'd like to add, or if you have any other comments before we get going.
I'll just say that as we gear up and head back towards school, and football practice started this week for many kids, and other sports, my daughter's cheerleading, kids are getting out there, getting active, even in the heat, they're fighting through, and it's really exciting to see. But I think that we really need to pay attention to the areas of the city where that's not happening, or the families in particular that aren't getting that kind of opportunities. The other thing that I think is important to note, coming out of the Olympics, the incredible courage of Simone Biles to talk about her mental health, and knowing that there's some positives and negatives in everything that we do. The yin and the yang of all of it is I think quite a perfect and poetic way to kind of look at how we are approaching this, and that every individual has their own path and their own journey. The strength and courage to be able to come forward and say, I need help, or I need to take a pause, or I need to take a break, is something that I think we should encourage in this time too, knowing that there is going to be an enormous amount of anxiety and stress placed on the shoulders of our kids as we return back to schools after years of a year at least of being separated from our peers and from our system. So just want to keep that in mind as we talk about tactical execution and great ways that we can collaborate and work together. And I really appreciate everyone being here.
Yeah, I echo what Bill says. I'm really excited that District 500 and Bishop Ward has determined that they're going to go forward. Everything is a goal for this fall. So they're trying to do whatever they can do so that we don't have what happened last year. And a lot of districts are doing the same. So I'm excited about that they're looking for different ways, even with what we're hearing with, this new variant and all that they're really looking for ways to be safe and to provide ways for our kids and our children, youth, and families to stay out there. I just want to encourage us that even with some of the tactics, man, we just got to get back to letting it be fun. If it's not fun, what bringing all the extra stress of having to win and all that, and it's all great. Yet I'm hoping that we find ways, even as we talk, that we keep the fun in sports. And even for us adults who are super competitive, I'm at the top of the list. I love to win. That's bad. I go to Jesus with that every day, but just learning how to have fun, right? To me, that might be a key in what Bill is talking about in dealing with the social emotional component of really getting folks back engaged. So again, thank you all for coming. Thank you all who came to the previous meeting that Robin was talking about. And so we're excited about today's meeting. And so Robin, Bryce, do you think?
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Bill and Adrian. All right, Bryce, let's see. Do you want to, go for it. So this is the results of the prioritization that we've done. We've actually done this a couple times now. We started it in June. We did it again in July. Results were the same each time. And that was of the 8 strategies that are part of the National Physical Activity Plan, 3 really rose to the top. All were scored quite well, but 3 rose to the top. That's strategy 3, strategy 4, and strategy 7. And so that's kind of where we're going to focus today, is the tactics for strategies 3, 4, and 7. And just as a reminder, strategies in this context are a set of choices used to achieve an overall objective. Strategies are useful in defining long-term objectives and in planning on how to meet those goals. While tactics, they're more specific actions that are used when applying a strategic choice. So tactics are more concrete than strategies and generally include actionable steps and a shorter timeline. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about strategies and tactics. And so,
Robin, can you quickly articulate the objectives or the objective?
I think Bryce has that on the next slide here. So for strategy 3, just as a reminder, I think we'll get to it in a second here, Bill. If not, let me know. So strategy 3 was that leaders in multiple sectors should expand access to recreational spaces and quality sports programming while focusing on eliminating disparities in access based on race, ethnicity, gender, disability, socioeconomic status, geography, age, and sexual orientation. So it received both very high marks for the impacts that it'll have on health and the priority that we should give it in Kansas City. So now we talked, this came up in the National Youth Sports Workshop a couple weeks ago. And this was the prioritization grid that one of the groups who was discussing disparities in access developed. And so I guess maybe Bryce, do you want to go through that just a little bit more and talk about impact and difficulty?
Sure, sounds good. So most of you that were on that call probably remember kind of how this activity came to be. We brought up ideas for addressing disparities in access, how we reduce disparities in access to youth sports in Kansas City. So I think this is almost directly related to this strategy and then the associated tactics that we are going to cover following this. But this is some good examples of what tactics might already exist. These might be some ideas that we can build upon related to the national plan, or some things that might already be in that plan that will work regionally for Kansas City. So first and foremost, we have bringing access and activities to the neighborhood. And then we also have creating and promoting affordable programs. So affordability and access are two of the largest components of these strategies. We said that their impact was very high, but their difficulty was kind of middle of the road. So it might be attainable. So I think we can keep these both in mind as we vote on the tactics of the national plan. There are 3 tactics for this strategy in the national plan, which you'll see on the next slide. So let's just keep these in mind. We also have a central coordinating organization. I think this is going to be something that comes up in a lot of our strategies. So we can decide kind of where to use this or where it might make the most sense to have a coordinating organization. And it might be present in, a couple strategies, and, it may even get into tactics as well. So that's another one to keep in mind. That one might be a little bit more difficult. And we have increasing partnerships across nonprofits. Like I said, that one's probably going to be pretty relevant in a variety of strategies and tactics as well. And then we have connecting schools and health related organizations or sport leagues. So that's kind of middle of the tier for impact. And then it's a pretty easy thing to do. So we do want to keep in mind that these things might already be happening. So that's kind of how we're going to facilitate our organization for these tactics. And I can kind of show you real quick. I think let's go down to strategy 3 real quick. So here we have our strategy. Below we have our specific tactics. So there's actually going to be 4 tactics for strategy 3. We're going to vote on each of those tactics. That's what we'll start with. We'll see where those all rank. If we want to keep certain tactics, if we want to get rid of them, if we need to adjust them. I think for the purpose of today, going through these 3 tactics and their associated, or I guess 3 strategies and associated tactics, we won't totally get rid of anything because Robin and I have talked about this in the past. Its relevancy may come up in the future, and we have further conversations.
And Bryce, to that point, when we were working in that workshop, the ones that were off to the side, we ran out of time to get them on the chart. Is there any reason to talk about the 3 of those out there and whether or not they're duplicates and they decided not to put them on the chart, or if there's a place for them on the chart?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So off to the right here, we have focusing on those who need it most. We have access for the disabled, and we have distributing activities and finances. So we can decide if those have a place on the board. And you know what, I'm going to do a double screen share here, or a split screen. That way we can kind of match things up. And before we do that, I think we should do a voting. But just for you guys to consider while you're voting, after we vote on these 4 tactics and how useful they are for Kansas City, we also want to consider if there should be any additional tactics for each sector or for each strategy. Does this need to be tailored for our region, or does the tactic make sense as it is? And then is this already being done in our region? So those are some of the things we're going to cover after we do this voting. And like Bill said, keep these other ideas in mind, these ideas that were brought up in the last meeting, because these might be very imperative to add to the tactics. So with that being said, what we're going to do first is let's vote on this tactics associated with strategy 3. So if everybody wants to go back into that Mentimeter, you can do it on your phone, go onto your laptop. This is going to be a 5-point scale for each tactic. We want you guys to rate it on if it's not a priority or an essential priority. So you're going to have the ability to drag it to 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We want you to do that for all 4 of these. We're going to be able to see the data in real time. And then once we have everybody's votes, we're going to move on to our Google Doc and then start our conversation and use these results to kind of guide that conversation. So.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of add one thing. We're trying to merge 2 different sets of tactics here. So what you're seeing on the screen right now is from the National Physical Activity Plan. And what was on the screen before came up in the workshop. And so there is some overlap between what was on the 2 slides. There's also some things that are a little different. So what we're going to try to do, Bryce and I, is make sure that we're considering both in this discussion. So.
All right, and there's 11. Let's see. And there's 12. All right, we'll give it, there we go, there's 13, there's everybody. Okay, great. So let's keep these in mind. I'm going to do another split screen here and we can start our conversation centered around these tactics. Okay, so it looks like tactic 1 rose to the top. That was closest to the 5 ranking, which is an essential priority. This is using data to identify populations who are at risk of physical inactivity and understand their specific barriers and devise targeted initiatives to reduce disparities. I think that aligns closely with the general strategy as well. And I think I would agree with, the data that we got from all of you guys that this tactic definitely needs to be present. But I definitely want to hear from you guys if there's any other components to this tactic that should maybe be added, if there's anything from this tactic that should be eliminated, if there's any linkages between these tactics where we can pare them down. So we can kind of start a conversation centered around that.
And I might start the conversation with this tactic about using data to identify populations at risk for physical inactivity. Does anyone know of this data locally? Is this already being collected somewhere?
I know that doing the health sector meeting, this is Jay Robertson, by the way. We had we were looking for what populations were at greatest risk in the kids anyway for obesity and diabetes, things like that. And that's what we used to decide where we were going to put the Walk with the Doc program. And yeah, so I know that the PCC clinic has some data, but again, that's just the kids. I don't know about any adult stuff. So.
This is Anthony Trackus from The Whole Person. I run an initiative that tries to close gaps in accessible sports and recreation. We've had a survey that's been ongoing for a couple years now, geared towards the disabled community that identifies barriers such as cost, transportation, things like that. I presented it some of the results in the Parks and Infrastructure meeting. So, happy to be part of this conversation. And if there's anything that our survey can do to help guide these tactics, we're happy to provide that information.
I'd say the After School Alliance, based out of Lawrence, also has some of that data. That takes into account the comparison between social, emotional, and physical activity. So I can check on that as well.
And my initiative's called the Accessible Sports of Greater Kansas City.
Great, thanks, Anthony. If you want to throw that link in the chat box, that'd be great for those of us that weren't able to see your presentation last 2 weeks ago, I guess.
Absolutely.
And I don't think Joey Leitner's on this call. They might possibly, with the physical activity lab, have some data that we would be able to use also. The one thing I would like to make a note of this tactic, and in all of our tactics as we talk about them, is I want to include language that speaks to the fact that kids have been inactive for over 15, 16 months because of the restrictions placed on them during COVID. And I just think it's important that we note that before COVID, there were problems, but because of COVID, they have been all exacerbated. And I think it's critical that we push that point forward in all the tactics that we're talking about.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I will say, I have seen some local data, like Dr. Roberson was talking about. Children's Mercy actually collects physical activity data for all kids attending their well child visits. So we've got tens of thousands of data points, and we have access to all that. We also have Children's Mercy does a community needs assessment every 3 years, and we're about ready to collect data on physical activity through that needs assessment. So this will be kind of a good opportunity for us to see over time how things have changed, to Bill's point, during COVID, how much they've dropped down. I suspect that it probably just exacerbated disparities in physical activity rates is my guess. But okay, so I'm very pleased that this tactic rated so highly, and that there seem to be lots of good sources. One thing that we'll try to do as the backbone organization is try to connect these different surveys. So I've taken notes on everything that was mentioned here. If you know of others, please let us know, and we'll try to connect all of them to each other so we can use that data to inform our work. Let's see. Just based on the National Youth Sports Workshop, I don't think those discussions really centered on data at all. However, the next tactic 2 and 3 that are listed here, I think do. And so the second one was creating opportunities for free and loose supervised play and prioritizing community-based affordable forms of organized play, such as in-town leagues. I think that those were reflected in terms of creating affordable programs that Bryce is showing on the stream now, maybe access to neighborhoods, and also, well, I guess those two. So those were ranked as high impact and kind of moderate difficulty. So I'm glad to see that there's some alignment between what we discussed a couple weeks ago and what's discussing today. The last one, Bryce, if you could show that screen, incorporating sports activities into before and after school programming. I think that really connects with what we talked about a couple weeks ago with increasing partnerships and connecting schools to sports leagues. So I guess with all three of those, they clearly were lower than the first tactic. But are any of those things currently happening? Are there any connections between schools and other entities for other sports entities? Free and loosely supervised play. I know, and I don't think we have anyone from KCPA Parks and Rec on, but I was with Krishna Lee, who's in charge of sports programming for KCPA Parks and Rec during the workshop. and she talked about how they have free or reduced cost leagues within their QLID districts, and those are zip codes that have been shown in Kansas City to have lower quality of life. So I think that is something that's currently going in our region. Any others that people know about?
Yeah, Dick's Sporting Goods is providing scholarships for league fees. I think it was just for our region, it's like $5 million, where teams can go in. First of all, parents can go in and click on a QR code to say, I need help paying league fees. Or teams or leagues can go in. I don't know if they have to be 501c3 status or not, but they can go in and try to get funding to help those participants pay for league fees. So I know we did, because we're having our registrations. Our team registrations are Saturday.
They do have to be 501c3s.
Okay, so we had to. I mean, we submitted. We put it out there to all the teams. That can happen. And I will say, I know that for us, we're not trying to get it down to free. We're trying to get it to reduced. And let me tell you why. One of the challenges we have in the urban core is that a sense of entitlement has been in our community for a while. And what we have found is that parents, because they're the ones paying for the fees, paying for the kids, sometimes have this mindset like they're owed something. So what we have decided as a league is to heavily reduce the costs to where we're talking about maybe $10 a kid, if that. But that a parent, when we call wood on the table, when there's wood on the table, right? There's a sense of, okay, I'm serious about my child participating in this program. So for kids, for families who have multiple kids that are coming out of COVID, like Bill says, and, work and, having to adjust now that stimulus is gone, having to adjust now that unemployment could be cut, understanding all that. However, also understanding that people will pay for what they want. Hear me when I say that. So when a mom shows up with her hair done, nails done, pedicures, and says, Coach, I can't afford it, I got a problem with that. I got a challenge with that. So we have decided to heavily reduce the cost, and we're not going to do free, because free is what you're going to get, because we do have costs to run the league. So I just wanted to put that out there. The free is cool, but then also you have to understand the context of the place where you're working, and how much are you helping or are you hindering that context by continuing a narrative that has almost held it in bondage for generations. So I just wanted to put that out there as well.
Yeah, so I think the key word may be affordable as opposed to free.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's great. What about, so those were good. I know Dick's, I think I'd forgotten about Dick's. I know the Kansas City Urban Youth Academy has, I believe, reduced rates for their sports leagues. Is anyone familiar with their model?
I'm not.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I'm not either. It's intriguing to me just because my thought is that it's almost baked into their program as opposed to like a separate step in terms of like applying for a scholarship or something. I think it's just when you enter the program, I don't know if it's a needs assessment or something like that is done to determine cost. I don't quote me on that, but I guess it's maybe a slightly different model than some of the others. If anyone has more clarity or other examples, feel free to.
This is Anthony. I can comment a little bit on Parks and Rec, and we use a similar method. We don't call it wood on the table, but skin in the game. And,
Yeah.
in the disabled community, there's also some sense of like wanting free things and then not showing up when you're signed up. So we partner with Parks and Rec for their accessible archery program out of Brush Creek Community Center. We have a power chair soccer program, and we typically, Parks and Rec makes a really strong point to keep them to like $40. We saw them do an accessible swimming program that was hundreds of dollars per participant, and then charging them only $40 or so to participate. And then you mentioned connection to the schools, and I'd like to kind of highlight this organization called Midwest Adaptive Sports. And as we talked about the Olympics, you know, they're basically our Paralympic track organization here in Kansas City. They use private nonprofit funding through Move United to sponsor their athletes. They kind of have like our wheelchair basketball sports leagues that are organized for use. It's really the only semblance of an organized league for disabled athletes. And they did a program that was doing assemblies in the schools, and it kind of fizzled out with COVID. I know they did another one maybe 3 months ago, but they went into maybe like 15 schools and did a presentation on adaptive sports, and then had the kids kind of proactively participate in the adaptive sports. And so they were in like Center High School, a bunch of the big schools in town, and Midwest Adaptive Sports, and they're a very isolated community. So just kind of wanted to bring that work to attention.
Thanks, Anthony. Yeah, these are good references and good connections. Thank you.
First Tee does scholarship stuff. I don't know much about the scholarship program, but I know that they offer free or reduced cost to participate. So they might be a good model to look at.
Yeah, Bill, do you want to tell us about that?
Well, I can tell you that they are, that's exactly what they do. It's not free. They found the same thing that Adrian was speaking to, and that is free isn't always, you know, people when they hear free, they don't commit. They don't lock themselves in. So the First Tee has over 1,000 kids they're running through their program this summer, all at reduced rates, reduced pricing. And then there's scholarship opportunities for kids to get into participating. So no one's turned away, which I think has to be part of all of the discussions too. I don't think we should be turning people away if they can't afford it. If they want to be there, I think we need to include them. So, you know, that's just the other side of the coin. I'd also be interested to hear what Katie Wade has to say in terms of free play and in organized play, and the kind of the difference between what it means to show up and just kind of pull together a team and play kickball on a field with millennials, and how she thinks about that with maybe kids. I don't know. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
that's okay. We don't currently run anything that's free. We do, like, our main part of our, you know, businesses, our leagues, we do offer pickup in some sports. But you know, we've done free like events or happy hours or stuff like that in the past. We actually, I'm thinking, I'm like, have we done anything free? We have done a free pickup of kickball and softball. And if people, what we're finding for adults at least, is if you make something free, there's no commitment. So there could be 50 people that RSVP to something and then don't show up. I don't have the same, I can't speak on behalf of youth.
it's the same.
Because I don't know, but you know, if there's no commitment, if it's like, oh yeah, cool, it's free, I'll maybe go, it's probably going to be a no, from what I've seen. So, and you know, and for our pickup, we charge a very minimal fee. So, you know, in any event, we've learned this along the way of like any event that we want to be affordable for people, We still we don't make it free. We make it $5, just enough to get them to commit. So that's what I've seen.
Thank you, Katie.
Hi, this is Anthony again. And, you know, we're obviously very pro fee, but there are some cases where it kind of goes the other direction. We have the Missouri Department of Conservation that is set on not charging anything for any of their programs. It's not the same on the Kansas side. As well as there are instances like with tennis and USTA where the cost to compete is hundreds of dollars. And so it is prohibitive and there's really no way around it. So.
Yeah, I love the way this conversation is going because there are instances where scholarships or hardship scholarships are necessary, where if we have a parent that has 4 children and let's say she wants them participating in flag / tackle / cheer, single mom. I mean, our data shows that almost 78% of our families are single mom, 2.9 kids per house. Then you find ways to make that happen. Because like Katie said, and like everybody said, and even like Anthony said, you don't want to turn them away. And it's going to take having some type of system in place to be able to determine those that need that. And so you're absolutely right. Being able to do that is great. And having a standard that at least, like Katie said, $5. I mean, people aren't just going to throw away $5. I don't care if it's just for a beer or not. They're going to show up for $5. But I love the way this conversation is going. I really do appreciate everyone's understanding of, you know, how do we get people to commit to their own well-being versus, okay, it's free and I can go anytime and I know it's there. Well, Katie has a salary, right? Jason has a salary. So there need to be some type of reciprocation from the communities that we serve. So I'm really excited about this conversation. Thank you.
Hey, Jason Older here. So Every Kid Sports, they're a very similar organization to Bill Sharewaves. They've raised like almost $10 million, I think, for what they do is they partner with a company called Check, and they put like $150 on a gift card, and you apply for these gift cards, and they can track where the money is being spent. So that way, it only pays for sports registration, because what they found is people will take some of these gift cards and they'll try to go pay for other things. That money is not valid there. It only works for kids sports registration. So that's another, maybe something that we could work with, is finding ways to raise funds and then having them make sure they only allocate towards kids registration for activities.
Can you say that organization real quick again, Jason? Sorry.
Yeah, it's Every Kid Sports.
Okay.
And I know the director there. She was on our podcast recently, actually. Her name's Natalie Hummel. And I'm sure she would be happy to share us like what their model is. Because they've worked with T-Mobile and with Dick's Sporting Goods on some pretty big donations from both of them.
Great, thank you. Yeah, Woody, sorry, we keep cutting you off.
No, it's okay. This is all great stuff. My position is just a little bit different because from a venue standpoint, you know, we do have our cost to the building for getting in, either with the memberships or with the day pass. And we've evolved a little bit from when we first opened. We were actually doing like a $5 entry, like for the day pass. It has since jumped to like 15 just because we've been trying to encourage the memberships. But I remember we actually did a free day. Katie, I don't know if you remember this, but we actually did a free day off of New Year's, I believe in 2019. We had just over 3,000 youth show up off of a few social media posts saying that the courts were free down here at the arena off of that. And we had the entire building for just pick up, and play that went for the day. But as far as like the costs of things, of being in there, yeah, there definitely has to be some sort of, structured part to being able to provide, those opportunities for them to get in and get to a spot and get to the activity that they're wanting to do.
Great, thanks Thanks, Woody. I might just do a slight transition to the topic of play, loosely supervised play, pickup games was mentioned. Katie mentioned pickup games in connection to like schools. And I know Bridget, I don't know if she's still on. Oh yeah, there she's still on.
Yeah, I'm here.
Do you want to just talk about what you posted in the chat box real quick?
Yeah. So I was looking up Link. They're the local investment commission, and they run a lot of after school and before school activities. But at least at FLA, they do have like a loosely supervised playtime for their students there. Now we're actually partnering with them to make that loosely supervised playtime more concrete and more organized. And I don't know if that's an offering at every school that they're in, but at least for FLA, that's what I know that they have right now.
And what's FLA again?
The Foreign Language Academy.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the school right by Lamar Zonitz. I may drive by there a lot. Do you know what the free play looks like, or loosely supervised play looks like? Is that after school, before school?
From talking with her, she made it sound as if it was after school, and you know, they have some sports equipment and the kids can kind of just do what they want. Like a recess time, essentially, is what it sounded like.
Now, I've started working with Tony Temple on, he has a program called Animal Movements, and we've added Simon Says to it. I do Simon Says. I actually did the first time with Jason in his gym class for about 45 kids. But
it was phenomenal, by the way.
We're taking that to all of the Boys and Girls Clubs across the city, and we've done Independence, and tomorrow we're doing Wagner. And we expect to have 50 to 60 kids dancing in the gym. That he brings a DJ, and he works through this Animal Movements program that he's put together. It's about a 45-minute program. I warm them up with a really great game of Simon Says, which, as I've done research on Simon Says, I've learned that it is a really positive impact on kids, scientifically proven to help them with their mind and body control and other things in terms of how their mind works. So excited as that thing comes together. We're building a whole program together that we can use to have free play with kids, just dancing around and moving. So excited about that, and we're not charging at this point. So
yeah, that's great. Yeah, and that almost I see as where is it connecting schools and other organizations with other organizations.
yeah, nonprofits,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, this has been a really great discussion. I'd like to move on to the next strategy. Any final thoughts on strategy 3 and the tactics around it? I think Bryce has done a good job taking notes. Bryce, I'm not sure if you've already done it, but he's taking notes in the Google document, which it's an open access. So anyone can provide comments directly into that Google Doc, either during the meeting or afterwards. So he'll put that in the chat box, and of course, it's also in our minutes that we send out in the newsletter next week. Okay, maybe we should move on, Bryce, to the next strategy. And
sounds good.
Do we have strategy 4 next, or are we going to?
I think we're going to 7. Let's see here.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to go to strategy 7. All right, let me get down here. Actually,
Yeah, so strategy 7, again, this was one of the top 3 ranked ones, and that is coaches, game officials, parents, and caregivers should create safe and inclusive environments for sports participation that promote physical activity and health for youth and adults participants. So there's a lot in this strategy in terms of who it's directed at and what the goal is. And I guess maybe that's why it ranks so high. But all about creating safe and inclusive environments that promote physical activity and health. Yeah, do you want to go over what the discussion centered around? So this is the youth sports strategy workshop discussion that may or may not align necessarily with our tactics that we'll show you in a second.
Yeah, these are a little bit difficult to see, but yeah, this basically focuses on developmentally appropriate and health focused programming. So how we will increase developmentally appropriate and health focused youth sports programming in Kansas City, and not only youth sports, but for all ages. So I'll go left to right. We can see which ones I can read and which ones I can't. But the first one, this is kind of middle of the road for impact, more on the higher side. And pretty easy to do. Help parents understand easy volunteering opportunities. I actually remember being in this group for our meeting a couple weeks ago. Implementing health-focused things into youth sports and other type of projects to, or I guess programs to catalyze health behaviors and brand health. So a good example of this was Chris Harris. You guys are probably familiar with Chris Harris Park. He's done a lot of programs where he uses things that people are already interested in to get them to these events. And then at these events, you can promote healthy lifestyles. You can provide them with maybe healthy foods for them to go home with. You can have, maybe Tony Temple there doing some programming, or provide some opportunities for reduced price sporting leagues and such. So that one looks like it is middle on impact. I think it could be a little bit higher, and then it's pretty easy to do because we can host events. The next one is including other stakeholders and groups to gather information and education they need. That's pretty general. I think we'll have that in even more tactics and strategies. Going up, we have general tips and tricks for coaching and training volunteer coaches on how to run group programs. You guys have talked about training before, having a good program to do that, or a centralized organization that's able to sign coaches off or sign leagues off. I think we should continue that conversation as we go through these tactics, so keep that in mind. Linking healthy habits with life lessons and skills in a digital format. This is definitely what Jason does with his program. He was in our group for this conversation, so I think he'll probably have some ideas and some linkages to these tactics. And I'll remind you guys, there are 3 tactics for this strategy. So if you feel like these aren't all encompassing, we can always add another tactic. A couple more here. We have, these might be hard to read. Yeah, I won't be able to read these, so we can just continue on to tactics, and I'll find a different version of this and hopefully bring up some conversation around these couple post-it notes. So let's get on to voting. And just a reminder, we'll use these mural boards from the National Youth Sports Strategy meeting, just kind of to facilitate some further ideas for tactic development. This isn't by any means the say all be all for what we're deciding on. So if everybody wants to take out their phone, let's vote on the tactics for strategy 7. And there's actually there's 5 with this. I misspoke, so there's not 3. So this may be all encompassing. We'll see. All right. All right, I know there's a lot to vote on here, so take your time with it. All right, we'll try to get this number up to 13 or 14, and then we can move on to our conversation. Looks like we got a few early leaders, the 2 towards the bottom. Actually 3 towards the bottom, and the looks like the top one, aligned coaching accreditations and curricula with best practices, might be one of the lowest. And you might see some similarities between these. I know that the top 2 are quite similar. And then we have some similarities between these last 3. Great. All right. We can move on to conversation. So.
Yeah, so the highest ranking one was the 4th one, which is increasing awareness about the need for parents and caregivers to encourage sports sampling where youth play multiple sports throughout the year, including formal and informal sports. So that's sports leagues and both pickup games, loosely supervised play, things like that. Then the last point, it's actually not on there. We can only put so much content, but also included in that is allowing sports to self-select their sport as they get older and have sampled multiple different sports. To me, that doesn't really rise, or excuse me, that's not a surprise that rose to the top. Seems like lots of people in conversations have talked about sports sampling. Any comments, just general comments on this?
Hi, this is Anthony. So my general comment on kind of loose play and pickup games is that we see that that's very widely adopted in like young children on playgrounds, and we call it parallel play, but not so much as kids get into more recreational and competitive activities. And just the kind of social benefits of exposure to your peers that are different than you and promoting diversity and inclusion through those types of plays is critically important. In my area of this, we are constantly struggling to develop sustainable programming where people can incorporate an activity of their choosing into their normal routine, like a lot of us are accustomed to, and straying away from the kind of one-time annual events that kind of celebrate disability, but kind of transitioning those more into like what we would expect, like a Thursday night activity that's regularly occurring.
I think Anthony's got a great point. I hope I'm not aging myself, but I remember when we were growing up, you played 3 or 4 sports a year, and that, especially with now with the normalization of high school kids now getting paid. I mean, I'm watching some of these kids get paid for their images. Now, I'm always been a big proponent for college kids to be paid, but now you got high school kids who haven't played a dime, who haven't done anything, who are football, basketball, whatever, that are getting these huge contracts to play these specified sports. Then when you talk about AAU and all that, and I said all that to say is that maybe this, I love the theme of sports sampling because I'm quite sure there are parents out there who still remember what it was like for your child to play varying sports. And so for those that we can get to where we can offer the different variety of sports. I remember one summer, one of our summer camps, we did tennis all year. And it was amazing watching the kids play tennis. And one girl stood out in particular to the tennis coach. So for those entities that can provide a variety of sampling of sports, I mean, if there's ways that we can help support them and promote them and try to push parents that way, then I'm all for that. I mean, that's a holistic way of learning about sports, right? Sports sampling. So I'm all for that.
Well, Adrian, to piggyback off that, I mean, kids gotta miss something in order for them to enjoy it. Like if it's there all the time, they're gonna get bored with it. They don't have the mental capacity to like want to keep getting better yet because they don't have enough life experience yet. And so, and if they're getting paid, and again, like I'm high school or college kids, that's great. They're adults, you name it. But if high school kids are getting paid, then maybe they're gonna start playing sports for the wrong reasons. And if they're just doing it to get paid, they're going to run out of the joy of it as well. So that's just my kind of 2 cents.
Yeah, I completely agree with both of you guys. Pastor, I'm with you on probably aging myself, but it was one of those things where when I came up, parents kind of directed you towards the sport or towards sport because that was going to be our way to go to college. It wasn't really big emphasis on educationally getting there. Find a sport and work for it and kind of go from there. What it is now is with competition being the way it is, kids can't afford to go and play another sport because you've got kids that are devoting all of their time, energy, and efforts to perfecting their craft in one sport. It is now a year-round thing for a basketball player or for a football player. They go from regular season to 7-on-7 to drills to back to football season. Same thing with basketball. You are high school to AAU to traveling and training right back into it. So there is they don't want the disconnect of going to play another sport when if this is the sport that I'm going to make it in, I can't leave and do something else and divert my energy and efforts to another sport when this is what I'm going to make it in or what I have to make it in to keep up with everybody else.
Well, what do you, to your point, man, though, like, you're putting all your eggs in one basket. And as you know, like if you get injured or, if life happens and that doesn't work out for you, then we have a lot of mental health issues because your plan A without having a plan B or C or D is gone, right? I mean, only 6% of college, only 6% of high school athletes go on to play college, and 3% are in Division I, right? So we're talking about a very small number of people like hoping that a sport will fulfill them. And the reality of it is they're probably going to get disappointed if that's like their one chariot that they're riding on.
100%. And now, like Pastor Adrian said, they're now doing it for the wrong reasons. I'm now going to chase after the likes and the shares and the highlights in a particular sport because it's going to get me noticed by a sponsor or some sort of product or service. And now that's my push for doing what I'm doing is so I can get this check in here so I can help my family out or so I can start financially being on another level. It's not because I actually love the game or love the sport. It's for a social reason now.
Yeah, I mean, Jason, you guys are making me think of there is an organization called the Rebels. If you ever get a chance, it's run by, we call him Coach Popeye because that's what he looks like is Coach Popeye. He looks like Popeye. He has football. He goes from football to basketball and from basketball to track. And I'm talking about highly competitive kids, K through 8th grade. That I don't, and he's been a part of our league for years. However, he's found a system where these parents realize their kids they stay together year after year, whether in football, basketball, or track, but they get exposed to those sports. And what's amazing is watching those kids, how they just outshine other football teams because they've been running track. It ain't even fair. You know what I'm saying? It's like, but like you said, but he's got this process in place. And I think there are other programs out here who are doing this sports sampling, but maybe aren't doing it from a sampling perspective. They're just giving their kids access at a level where kids love it. Parents see the fruit of it. And I'm talking about kids going on and getting scholarships, going on and playing, Bishop Ward or whatever. But
Well,
so there are programs out there.
Aspen Institute, one of their challenges is the, you know, specialized sports, and their solution is sampling. And the information that they've gathered, the data that they've collected, it's clear that our eye-hand coordination is improved by playing multiple sports, and that the athlete becomes a better athlete because they are sampling different sports, because they're using a wide variety of different motor skills and developing different types of motor skills, which lends to a better athlete as they get to an age where they're ready to specialize. And, you know, their recommendations is kids don't specialize until they're 16 or 17 years old.
Yeah, I mean, we always tell people, you know, there's only a few sports where you should specialize early, where it's recommended you specialize early. It's basically figure skating and gymnastics. But I mean, there's plenty of evidence out there. If you look at Australia, the way they dominate the Olympics for how small of a country they are, they get their athletes playing lots of sports, and then they direct people where they're best at things. Later on in life, you know, in high school and college age. And then if you look at, like, there was a nice stat about Ohio State football like 5 years ago, and 96% of their athletes played multiple sports in high school. Basically, Urban Meyer wouldn't even look at kids who didn't play multiple sports in high school, because he knew there was so much benefit that they got from playing these other sports and trying other things. It just made them better athletes, which, once you're a really good athlete, you can turn anybody into a college football player if you're an incredible athlete. So, you know, just little anecdotes and stats like that help, but you got to get it to the right people. I mean, people are convinced their kids are only playing basketball. It really doesn't matter what we tell them. They're going to keep their kid just playing basketball.
Yeah.
Well,
I think it'd be, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it would be very interesting to see, like, when that transition happened. You know, I grew up playing multiple sports as well, but I have seen in my previous job kids just focusing on a single sport. So I would be very interested to see that transition of how good they are and like how it compares to previously. Anyway.
Great conversation to listen in on, guys. I've always felt like, you know, we have a problem in our country with cannibalizing other sports. Is, you know, when I was growing up, we all abruptly switched from soccer to football because it was new and exciting for us, and it totally just cannibalized the sport. But as this relates to like adults and accessible recreation, we often kind of promote sports as like an alternative medicine for people to participate in to help, you know, their personal lives or all aspects of their lives. And we often encounter people, especially from urban demographics, that were burned by organized sports growing up, that are just anti-sports people in general. And those conversations typically lead to them wanting to participate in things like weightlifting, fitness in general, and just more recreational opportunities that can also be organized. So just something to bring to the table.
This is a great conversation, and Bryce has pulled up the discussion that happened at the youth sports workshop, and they talked a lot about sports sampling. I wasn't in this group, but they identified some barriers to success, how to overcome those barriers, and who can implement. And it's a little small. We'll see if Bryce can zoom in on that. If not, I can just here. I'll also paste this, put this link in the chat box. Anyone can view it. You can't edit it, but you can view it. And there were some really interesting points there. I think this has come up in terms of who can visit, who can implement, which is the sticky note on the far side. And it's some of the things that we've talked about is communicating with parents and maybe schools. But I also heard some other things about getting some sports teams, whether pro or local sports teams, or even athletes
It
to
should
talk
be right
about.
there on that. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Getting other sports leagues or other known celebrities or athletes to talk about the importance of sports sampling. For example, Patrick Mahomes is probably the most famous example that he was, a two-sport athlete at a minimum, and maybe even more as he was growing up, and much until late into his career. So I guess if anyone happened to be in this group during the workshop last week and has any thoughts to build on what we're showing on the screen. I know Hy-Vee in the Overcoming Barriers, Hy-Vee Arena is specifically cited as the way that a facility could create opportunities for facility use for multiple different sports.
Yeah, I think I sat in on this group. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I know it was a couple weeks ago, but it feels like forever.
Right. I'm trying to remember.
I guess what I'm trying to think about is this tactic calls for increasing awareness about sports sampling, but it doesn't have a lot of detail on exactly how to do that. And so this might be a good additional tactic, I guess.
Yeah, and I think you're right, because at this time we were just pretty much brainstorming and we didn't get to the tactics. So I think this was as far as we got, was just getting it on the sticky notes.
Yeah.
Well, this is Jay. I think one of the big problems with sports sampling is I think there's kind of two opportunities to do it. You got the quick try everything, you get a couple week camp or something like that where kids get to try multiple sports. But then there's the how do you get kids to do like a sustained 4 or 8 week season in a sport and then switch to a different one. So I think that's kind of two different issues maybe. And obviously you go about dealing with those very differently. But I think step one is probably the beginning stages of just letting kids try out as many possible things in a fairly short period of time, something organized like Camp Win.
Yes.
Where they do that.
I had a conversation with Jeff Diskin, who is the head baseball coach at Pembroke, but he's also works for the Kansas City Royals in their senior level development. And he has a vision for doing a summer camp similar to Camp Win, where there's 10 weeks of camp in between the end of school and the beginning of school. And each week is a different sport, and you rotate pods of kids through each week. And it's the same, the same people do the same camp, but you're moving kids, into different areas of the city, engaging them. And I absolutely love the idea. And I think you could mobilize different sports to offer different opportunities for kids to sample. But I do think you're right that gives you a great exposure and gives kids, who haven't been exposed to lacrosse, get them lacrosse sticks or other sports, tennis, golf. But it doesn't quite necessarily give them the time that it takes to actually develop the motor skills and the expertise within that sport to be able to use it the way we're talking. So, but I love it. I love both. I think you're right. It's a two-sided coin.
I think the programming is going to be the biggest part to this. There's got to be something established that can go ahead and create that avenue to introduce the kids to different sports. And William, I love that idea of them being able to sit up and jump from sport to sport. And Jessica spoke about that, with them doing that. That is just a phenomenal thing. But we got to find the programming and the folks that can implement that so that they can continue to bring or introduce pickleball, let them run track, let them be exposed to all these different things that they necessarily wouldn't try or choose to try. But you never know. Somebody put a pickleball paddle in my hand, and I now own one. I love it now. It's addictive. I ordinarily probably wouldn't have played pickleball ever until someone was like, "Hey, come on, let's go play this." And
Anyone could do it. Katie and Luke Wade could.
absolutely, and I've seen them. So I really think if there are some programs that can get in with facilities that have access to go ahead and introduce these different sports to these kids, then that's going to be the best way to kind of inject that.
I think we can do it because I've spoken to a lot of heads of leagues. The Jay Coleman he was with Blue Lions Lacrosse. Now he's with Elevate Lacrosse, big lacrosse group, really interested in getting lacrosse sticks in kids' hands that don't have chances to play. I've talked with the hockey guys. They're so interested. The Monarchs want to do a youth academy baseball. I think you soccer, certainly Sporting KC and Victory Project would be all about it. And so would Nick Garcia and Soccer in the City and Shane Hackett with Heartland Soccer. And you go to GABL basketball and you get Sean, forget his last name, but and they do football too. You get Pastor Robert Robertson and his team. He has an army of people there. If we could, we would have to figure out how to fund it. That's it. The people are there to do it.
I'd like
Is
to.
Are Parks and Rec on the conversation today?
I don't think so.
Not today.
So back in the day, when my kids were young, there was a camp led by a PE teacher held at an Overland Park Parks and Rec location. And it was called Cooperative Games. They introduced a variety of sports in this camp. Now, not everyone that you can think of, but there are a few models that people have tried. They're led by one person. So it's not like, to the point Bill is making, it's not bringing in different organizations to come in that have to lead this little activity. It was actually one instructor introducing kids to a variety of different games, some of which they could pick up and engage in after the camps were over. You can sign up for the camp for a week. You can sign up for the camp for the summer. Parks and Rec have done very similar things. Again, my kids participated in outdoor camps during the summer that was their sort of childcare, and they'd be introduced to swimming. They'd be introduced to a variety of other activities, but some of those have included a variety of sports now, and some of them not the ones you'd think of, like frisbee, disc golf,
Rock
jump
climbing, bouldering,
That's right.
rafting, kayaking.
speed kayaking, speed canoeing. Yes, but anyway, there are some slightly similar models that have happened through Park and Rec sorts of things that could be considered as we think about this.
So to Woody's point about pickleball, I really think we see sports sampling kind of take off in adulthood when we've kind of shed away the societal and parental pressures that are on us. So it kind of makes me think of, do we give the choice to the parent or to the kid, or how do we develop some independence in the children's decision making to try new things?
I think you need to educate the parents first, right? So like understanding like, hey, what is your purpose for having your kid play, and are you allowing your kid to dictate their interests? Now, like if they start something, they should definitely finish it. But part of it is educating parents on what is sports doing for your kid, and not allowing sports to be used by you, but you using the sport to develop healthy habits, right? So I think it's a lot of education needs to be given to the parents on why they're playing their sports, and are their kids your goals for your kids playing sports matching up with your kids' goals for playing the sports. Like kids and parents are on the same page. And then also allowing your kid to be coached and not coaching them from the sidelines or putting too much pressure on them. and just letting them play, right? And not being wrapped up in like, hey, this is my ticket to get a scholarship, which we know for the most kids, that's not the case.
So that's a great point. So, how do we, let either the child decide and not the parent, or, vice versa? Is it even practical that the kid will be choosing and not just kind of following what their parent wants them to do, and then making the parent understand, that, different sports activities are going to be more beneficial given that their child and what they need out of it. I think another, like the devil's advocate, we see a lot of parents, rightfully encouraging their children to play in team organized sports for the social aspect and teamwork, and kind of avoiding the individual sports like tennis and things like that. And so,
Oh, Anthony, not self here, but like we developed a 25-day course for parents to understand how to navigate youth sports. And so like we've done it on an online way where it's like 3-minute videos. It's super short because I mean, if you have parents try to come to these like mandatory meetings that last for 2 hours, they're not going to show up. But I mean, if you have something where it's easily digestible, it's like I got 3 minutes to watch this while I'm waiting for my kid to be picked up from practice, you name it, then it's more likely for them to at least get a couple of the lessons in, and even a couple can make a big difference. So having an online piece where they can just log in and watch, how do I have a better experience with my kid in sports is, I think, is at least the first step, in my opinion, to help educate the parents.
Yeah, I think you guys are hitting the nail on the head. There's that is an extremely difficult conversation to have, to talk a parent into letting their kid do another sport. So putting my coach's hat on now, I'm coaching over at Schlegel. We've actually kind of approached some parents like, hey, your kid probably needs to be on the football field. He probably needs to be out there and running track. There are so many parents right now that have made up their mind on what their kid is going to do. And we can't tell parents how to parent. We flat out can't. We can put the idea and the benefits and the education in front of them, and then what they're going to do with it is what they're going to do. I think that would be, the biggest thing, like you said, Jason, is providing them with the education so that they can actually make a little bit better of a conscious decision instead of already making the decision. I know parents that have already said, my kid is not going to play football. And that's it. The decision is made for them, kind of preemptively, and then they're steered, elsewhere. So attempting to educate the parent and having that difficult conversation, but still having it, is going to be key.
And Woody, to your point, man, I think, when parents make decisions for their kids miss out on what? Decision-making skills. So
Absolutely.
I think it's like asking kids, what are they interested in? And then allowing them to at least like dabble in their interest, and then having parents check their ego on like, hey, what's best for your kid? What do you want? Do you want them to be a compliant adult that only does what other people tell them to, or have them be able to speak up themselves and empower themselves? I'm not saying being like, not compliant or like not or being like a rebel or anything, but I mean, having the ability to decide what's best for themselves is the best skill you can give a kid.
Well, everybody, this has been a great conversation, and we're at 2:30, which is our scheduled end time. So what we're going to do is we'll pick up with the discussion at our next meeting from here. And we will send out the minutes and the summary of the conversation and all these slides next week. Bryce will send that out. And so look for that in your inbox. Our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, September 8th at 1 o'clock, 1 to 2:30. That's following our second Wednesday of each month pattern. And before we go, of course, if you have to leave, feel free to step off. But I'll just open up the conversation here just to ask any questions or promote any of their events that they've got coming up, or any other things that they think would be helpful to the rest of the group. I know Pastor Adrian just posted something in there about sports physicals. So this is a great thing to bring up.
Thanks. I'll make this quick. Yeah, we're needing someone to come out and do sports physicals. We're having our team registrations this Saturday. And I know it's the middle of the week, but we've been hitting like major red lights. Just getting someone to come out and do our sports physicals from 10:30 to 3 at Hy-Vee this Saturday. So if you know of anyone that might be interested, my number's there. Like I said, with our partnership with Hy-Vee, we'll make sure we handle all the mask mandates. We'll make sure we'll make it as COVID safe as we possibly can. However, we do need someone who can come out and consider coming out on the Saturday to help us with our sports physicals. So that would be great. Give me a call if you can. And if there's anything we can do to help your organizations, please feel free to give me a call as well. Thank you.
Any other announcements? Oh, yeah, Anthony posted his survey. Yeah, thanks Anthony for sharing that. Anthony was a speaker in the another working group that we have for the Kansas City Physical Activity Plan. Bryce, maybe we can include a link to that in our meeting minutes. Anthony was a presenter at it. It was a great presentation a couple weeks ago. So we'll include the link to his presentation in our meeting minutes.
And then I do want to let folks know we do have a lot of space and opportunity down here at the arena. You know, with our meeting rooms, we've got the courts, we've got the track, you know, we've got the workout facility. I think there's a lot of things that can, you know, really good things that can happen down here as far as after school type things with that getting ready to get going, you know, and as far as just, you know, gosh, athletic development, you know, for different programs and kids things too. So, you know, definitely catch up with me, you know, if we've got something that can be plugged into the arena.
What do you do? Have classrooms with like TVs and screens in them, like Promethean boards or anything like that? Do you all have that down there as well?
Sure do.
Cool.
Yeah, so Move More, Get More is looking to hire more after school coaches. So speaking of sampling, sports sampling, our program is after school anytime between like 2:30 and 6. It depends on the school, but a coach will have to dedicate about an hour and a half of time each day. So we're looking for coaches that have experience with middle schoolers and have knowledge about multiple sports and fundamental basics around those sports. So yeah, if I'll put my information in the chat, if you guys have any coaches, that would be awesome. It is a paid position, so.
Great, thanks. Move More, Get More is a great after-school program connecting sports and after-school programs. So it's great, exactly what we're talking about here. Anything else? All right, great discussion, everybody, today. Really appreciated it. And I'll let maybe Bill and Adrian close us out. Oh, Roll Tide, maybe, I don't want to hear that.
I don't know no other way to close it. That's all I got. Cardinals and Royals this weekend. Looking forward to that. Excited about that. Yeah, I see you, Jay. I see you. That's right. That's right. That's right. Thank y'all so much, man. This is really, it's really exciting to be in on these conversations, and I'm learning a lot from all of you. So on behalf of KC United and Wyandotte County and our community, man, thank you all for the work that you do. And we're all in this together. So that's all I got. Thank y'all. Love y'all, man.
Well, I love you, Pastor Robertson. You're the best, man.
Great.
Pastor Robertson.
Thanks, guys. Everybody's doing good work.
All right, Jay.
See Jay.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Stay safe.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
See you, Bridget. Thanks.